All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aaron, and this is my colleague Dave. Today we're going to be talking about operations dashboard and showing you some cool tips and tricks. So I'm going to go through configuring the dashboard layout and configuring some actions to kind of bring your dashboard to life. All right. So here I have an example dashboard that's mostly complete. Just to give a brief overview of what we're seeing here. So on the left we have some different point assignments representing work that has to be done. On the left we have another feature layer that has a list of workers. And then up here at the top we have several different indicators showing the number of assignments in certain statuses. So we have assigned, unassigned, in progress, and completed. And then finally, in the center here, we have the map. So in the map, you can see there's different assignments, there's different workers, and then additionally, there's different polygons representing certain boroughs in the New York City area. So you might be wondering, oh, there's quite a bit of extra space up here. Maybe I want to combine these elements together so that I can drag them around in a more easy way. So one thing you can do is hover over the element, click drag item. If you hold the shift key down, it turns it green, indicating that you can group this with another element. So if we group it together, it'll group these as one group. Additionally, we can drag this over here, hold down shift again, bring those two together as a single group. And then in addition to that, you can drag actual group and group that group to another group. So now I have one large group at the top representing the status of different assignments. This highlights how I can move this entire group maybe to the bottom of my dashboard, like this. And instead of having to move 4 separate elements, I just move 4 at a time. It's pretty nice. Additional thing you might want I want to show is how you can stack elements. So for example, maybe I want to add a legend to my dashboard to show what things in the map are represented by. So I can add a map legend, very simple. It'll put it over here. If I drag over and I want to stack it behind my assignments list here, I can just drag to the center, boom. It stacks it on top of each other. So I have a list in one tab here, and I have the map legend behind it. So this can save you some serious screen real estate when you're designing your dashboard. So now maybe I want to be able to interact with this dashboard. I want to be able to click on one of these workers here and actually have it affect what this shows. So for example, maybe I want to click on one of my workers here and zoom the map to that location and flash it. I can hover over the list here, go to configure actions. This brings up an action dialog. I can click add action, zoom, add my target, the dispatcher map that I have. In addition to zooming, I can add a flash action. Again, flash on the map. I can click done. So now if I click on one of these workers, I can actually zoom my map to that location and flash. So that's pretty neat. So one of the common questions that we've gotten on the forums and on GeoNet and whatnot is, how can I configure the zoom? So maybe this zoom is actually zooming too far or not zooming enough. One of the things that you can actually do, you can open the dashboard JSON in AGO Assistant here and actually make a manual edit for a property that's not exposed to the user interface right now. So I want to view an item's JSON. I will select my dashboard here. So you can see it brings up all this JSON here in my dashboard. If I search for a property called flash repeats, you can see that right now it's shown as 3. Maybe I want to actually edit this to make it flash 6 times, for example. So I will remove that, make it 6, and then additionally, maybe I want to zoom to a different scale. So I can say point zoom scale, and I will make this, the default is 10,000 right now, so maybe I want to zoom in further. I will make this 5,000. So just click save. If I go back to my dashboard over here, refresh, it'll pick up that change. And now, when I click on one of these workers, you can see that it zoomed in to a tighter area, and then the flashing is still continuing since I told it to flash 6 times. So this highlights the fact that there are some capabilities that are not exposed to the UI, but you can edit these if you really need to. So you might be saying, well, that's cool, Aaron. Like, I can click here, see the worker, flash it. Maybe I want to actually filter all these assignments. So I can go back to my worker list here, configure actions again, add another action. I'll add a filter, add a target. I want to filter the assignments on the map, so I check that box. Now you see here, I get a source field and a target field. So my workers are represented, they have an ID, an object ID. So I'll use that for the first field, and then my assignments, they have a worker ID. So these two fields map together. So now if I click done, and I click on one of these, and I zoom out, you can see that only the assignments that are assigned to that worker are shown on the map. So this highlights how you can configure actions between multiple unrelated layers. So if we want to add additional actions to maybe filter some of these indicators down here, we can add more. Add another target. I want to filter the actual workers on the map. There's no configuration because this layer is the same as the layer used in the list. Maybe I want to filter the assignments list. Same idea. Select the object ID and select the worker ID. Click done. Now my assignment list here will update as I click. And you can see that how they refresh. So that's interesting. So one other thing that you can do as far as filtering is you can filter by the actual map extent. So maybe I want to drag the map and have my assignments filtered and my workers filtered. So I can go to configure actions on the map. At the top here, you see there's different sources. So there's the map, there's the workers, there's the assignments, and then there's this other layer of the districts. So I can say when the map extent changes, I want to add an action. I want to filter. I will filter, in this case, the indicators at the bottom. So I'll add all 4 of those indicators. 1, 2, 3, 4. Click done. And then now you can see it shows 0, 0 because there's no assignments in my view. If I zoom out, unselect those, you can see it shows all my assignments. If I zoom in, say to this area, you see how the map, changing the map extent updates these different indicators here. So this highlights how you can use the map extent to filter other visualizations in your dashboard. So that's cool. One other interesting thing that we've added to the dashboard in the previous release is you can have a header panel here. So I'll just add a quick simple header panel. And in this header panel, you can actually add new elements called selectors. So you can add, oops. So you might want to add a category selector. So in this case, I want to select those assignments in the map by the city borough that they're within. So in this case, I'll make it by the district, put a title here, and then I will select features. I'll select the polygon, my polygon layer of NYC boroughs. Select that, scroll down. I want to display the borough name here. So you can see in my dropdown it has Manhattan, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, etc. So that's a simple configuration. I can go to the Actions tab, add an action, filter. This time I want to filter the assignments, but I want to filter it spatially. So here you're given 2 choices. Since it's based on features that have geometry, you can filter by a field, or we can filter by the geometry. So I'll select spatial. I'll also do that same thing for the workers here. So now, if I click done, let me actually remove the map extent filter. So now, if I select like Manhattan, for example, I only see the assignments in Manhattan on the map. If I select Staten Island, there's nothing shown because there's no assignments down there. So this highlights how you can use another layer, another polygon layer, to refine the view of your map and refine what you see in other visualizations. One other cool thing that I want to show today is how you can use date selectors to filter your data. So again, in the header panel here, I can go add date selector. I want to filter by the due date, for example. So here you have a couple options. You can use the find options, date, or the date picker. So I want to have some predefined options for my users of the dashboard. Maybe I want to filter by the due date was today. So I give it a title of today. I say is for the operator, and then I have a couple different options here. So today, yesterday, tomorrow, etc. I'll just go with today. And then maybe I also want to add one for tomorrow. So I can say, is the date tomorrow? Maybe I want to also add one additional option to show all dates. So I'll add a none option, provide a new title, a new label, all dates. So now in the dropdown, I have a choice between all dates, today, and tomorrow. If I go to the Actions tab here, I can add an action. So I want to filter, and this time, let's filter those indicators. So I can filter the indicator. So it's provided a date from my date selector here, and I want to filter the due date. So I'll do this for a few of those indicators real quick. So now, you see it adds an additional drop-down here where I can select assignments that are due today, and you see that those are reflected down here in the different indicators. If I want to modify this, I can say how many assignments are due tomorrow. So this allows your dashboard to be very interactive, and you don't have to create predefined filters either in your web app or in specific visualizations. One other interesting thing that I'd like to highlight today, before I turn it over to Dave, is how you can embed a dashboard into other web apps or other websites that you might have. So if we jump over to this very simple HTML code here, it's just one file, index.html. I've created a div here, close that div, and then inside of here I provided a title, so a dashboard embedded into a website. All I have to do is add one line here, iframe. I can provide my dashboard here that's shared publicly within the organization and externally. And then if I jump back, you can actually see this in action. So this is an example of an embedded dashboard, and it looks pretty cool. You really wouldn't even know that it's a dashboard. So I'll turn it over to Dave now. He wants to talk about configuring charts and general dashboard design.
Great. Pretty cool, huh? I'm going to need your display.
All right.
Your HTML. HTML. All right. So I'm going to cover some design-related tips and tricks for Operations Dashboard. And I'd like to start off just by talking about color as a concept. Colors and contrast can influence where a user's eyes go immediately when they see it. It can also connect data between your elements. So in this dashboard, the colors on these indicators align with the symbol colors in the map. Colors can also create a sense of authenticity when you use your branding colors. It can create a certain aesthetic or even evoke emotion, such as discomfort or relief. Looks like I'm having some internet issues, so hopefully it works all right. And another technique is to let the base map influence the colors of your dashboard. So in this case, I'm using the same blue throughout the base map and my elements. And I'm also using the text color of the labels in the base map for my text on the dashboard. Next, I want to talk about some tips for the elements themselves. And starting off with the serial chart. If you're fairly new to Operations Dashboard, the serial chart is a chart that can visualize your data as a bar chart, column chart, area chart, line chart, or combinations. And so in the top here, I have more or less a default configuration. and I'm using a date field, and I'm allowing the application to bin it into days. Below, I'm visualizing it as an area chart. And one technique I used is I'm showing the labels above the points. And because I'm showing the labels, I can remove the value axis, the y-axis, because it's not really necessary anymore. Along the bottom here, on my category axis, I've used a different pattern that I am showing right here to show the day of week, because in crimes that's relevant to show. And then on the first of the month, you can specify a different labeling pattern, and so I'm showing the month and the year. I realize that my let's try this. All right, hopefully you can see that better now. Next, I want to talk about the list element. There's some cool tricks that you can do to save vertical space or to give some visual effect. So on the left, I have the name of the feature and then what looks like a tag. And what I'm doing is I'm customizing the HTML within the rich text editor, and I'm applying a background color and actually extracting that color code from a field. And then I'm also floating that text to the right. And when there's a collision, then the text just pops up above. In the middle, I'm using an inline block to present this kind of media item effect. And I'm applying a left border color to create that vertical line. And again, when space is constrained, they just wrap underneath. And on the right, again, I'm using a float left, float right technique just to kind of separate the information visually and then consolidate it vertically. I want to talk about indicators. Indicators are very popular, and they're actually, you can use them in a lot of different ways. This is a relatively simple indicator, but I am using a custom SVG. So here you have a pretty good catalog of icons that can help tell a story of what the data represents. And we're actually adding to this list in the upcoming release next month. But if you do need a custom icon, you can paste your SVG source code in here. And there you go. Now, it might be distracting, especially since this is animated. So maybe we only want this to display when a threshold has been reached. So if there's been one or more crimes, I can define, or I can visualize it differently. So by defining a reference value of 1, I'm able to turn on conditional formatting. And that creates 2 previews. So when my reference value has been reached, I can show a different indicator than when it's below the reference value. You can also define a statistic-based reference, and here I'm basically doing another query. So I'm in my value, I'm querying for the number of crimes in the last 28 days, excluding today. And then I want to compare that to last year at this time to see whether crimes are up or down compared to last year. So here I'm doing another statistic, and I'm constraining it to is before the last 365 days and was within the last 393, a 28-day difference. Again, I have conditional formatting on, and here I'm using a different colored text based on where it falls, above the value or above the reference or below. And down here, I've turned on prefixing just to simplify the number that's displayed. So this is in thousands. And moving on to pie charts. Pie charts can be effective, although they can easily be abused and misused. Typically, you shouldn't have more than 3 to 4 categories on a pie chart. Otherwise, you're better off using something like a serial chart or a bar chart. If you do have a data set like this, where you have several large slices and then several small slices, you can use what's called grouping percentage. So by adding a grouping percentage, I'm clustering them into an other category. And then the bottom charts just show some aesthetic techniques that you can use. You can add an inner radius and an outline color to create this effect. You can also offset your labels in a negative direction to be over top of your chart. And coming next month, we are really excited to introduce the ability to use your charts to drive actions on other elements through selection. So I've configured this so that when I click on the blue bar, which represents larceny, I'm filtering my other elements. On this date-based chart, I can select the last 3 days, and everything updates to show the last 3 days. And I can also constrain this to the Central Police Division. All right. And just a little a trick I did in my web map. I actually have symbols that are scale dependent, so they get larger as I zoom in to help you see them when you're at the street level, and to minimize the noise when you're out at the city level. And I'm also making the crimes within the last 24 hours larger than the older crimes. And I'm doing that through an arcade expression, just taking the difference from now to the dispatch date in hours. And then I'm also passing in the view scale, which is a variable available right here, and just adding a factor for when it's less than 24 hours old. And with that, I think we're going to open it to questions. So I know that was a whirlwind, but we have a lot of fun stuff that we want you guys to start utilizing. So the question was whether you can use a time slider either within your map or on the dashboard. Like for instance, it's the one that's available in the map viewer. The answer is not at this time. It is something that is on our radar, though. Yes. Is this what you're talking about? Yes? No? Okay. So within the list, this is where you would type in what you want displayed in each list item. And if you click source, that's where you put in your HTML code.
When you had your filters earlier, you had some of your dropdowns had none type, but how do you deselect filters when you're picking your workers or whatever?
So the question is, how do you deselect in your list if you want to show everything? It depends how you configure the selectors. So you can configure it to always have one option selected, or in that one example, I added a none type. So the none type means that nothing is selected, so there's no query sent to filter. So you could select none, which I defined as all dates in my example. So all dates represents there's no date filter. Does that answer it?
Well, kind of, but like if you're filling your list with workers that come from a feature, and you pick one and your action is to do a filter, how do you put in a none type in something that comes from a feature like that? Or is that part built into the list?
Yeah, so on the list, there's two types of selection. There's multi-selection and single selection. And so in the list, if I click on an item in the list, it gets selected. If I click that again, it becomes unselected, which will give you back everything.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Question in the back?
In the back.
Would you like them to? The question was whether these are going to be available online. I think we can make that work. Derek in the back is volunteering to write some blogs about this.
Yes,
Yeah.
right in the center.
Yep. So the question was about pie charts, and I think you were getting at the ability to select on the chart and then have it reflect in the map. And yes, I didn't demo that, but that is coming with the next release. You'll be able to select on the chart, on the pie chart, and apply a filter action on your map layer or other elements. Yes. I don't know, who's next?
I guess in the back.
Back. When's the release? I believe it's planned for April 10, but don't hold me to that.
Over here.
I noticed a lot of the dashboard examples using point events or point data and point temporal data. You have examples, maybe I can talk after about polygon temporal, where you may have overlapping, let's say, townships where it may be changing data over time. Then let's say instead of townships or counties, you want to be able to build a dashboard off that. I'm curious to know how you might go about doing that.
Sure. So the question was about whether we have any samples with polygon data and that is temporal in nature. Let's chat afterwards. I don't think we have another demo theater after this, so are we good to just keep answering questions?
I guess. So
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Actually have used this yet, but just to double check what you said. So there's a way users can create their own filter, kind of like how the attribute table web app builder.
Yeah, so like what I demoed was using what we call selectors. So when you create a selector and then you save your dashboard and publish it and share it with other people, they have access to those selectors. So you can create those different types of queries and you can use multiple selectors and they get anded together so you can further refine the view on the map.
But can users create their own selectors?
They cannot create their own. It's whatever the dashboard owner, the dashboard author creates those selectors, defines what's available in those dropdowns, and then the user can use those.
Because you know what I mean? That would be very useful, just like in web app, where users can create their own this, or this, or whatever. That would be pretty cool. The other thing is, to follow on your question, so you can control the renderer. So like if you had a bar chart, and you click the red or the pie chart, it can influence and make the points red where it's coming, I guess. Controlling, you can set the symbology. Like if you click the pie chart and it was like red for like whatever that percentage was, it can make the points red on the map or make them bigger. It can control the symbology. 'Cause that's what she was asking. Like if it's like red and green and yellow slices of the pie chart, seeing the same colors when you click it in the map would really make it pop. Like if you click that light blue and make the points blue, it programmatically select or I mean set symbology.
Yeah, so the question was about basically updating the symbology based on a selection from the chart. Short answer, no. There's not a way to override the symbology. You could apply like a flash action that would, draw attention to it, or you could simply filter. So, you like in this example, I clicked the blue bar in my bar chart, and I'm filtering to just show blue points on the map.
Yes, in the front.
Will there be a future enhancement that will allow for smart layouts so you can distribute evenly the spacing on your widgets? Because right now, like if you let's say in this dashboard and you just randomly added in another, obviously the other side it's kind of wonky and then you have to manually pull it over. Is there a way to do that without going into HTML5 and changing the layout like that?
No.
The question was about the layout. If there's any way to
have, like-
easily distribute the elements evenly. Short answer is no. We have heard that request, and so we're talking about it. Yeah. Why don't, if you have more questions, you can just come up and talk to us. Thanks for coming.